As we all know, the true victims of every Islamic terrorist attack are not the actual victims of the attack, or their families, or their friends, or the population that the attacks are meant to terrorize. The true victims of every Islamic terrorist attack are Muslims who have to live in constant fear of that frightening but mythical creature, the anti-Muslim backlash. Within hours of an ISIS-inspired jihadi plowing through innocent civilians on a New York City bike path, NBC News was already diverting our attention away from the people who were slaughtered in the name of Allah towards the real victims, Muslim Americans who were again bracing for an attack by that shadowy figure last seen in hazy photos of Lake Loch Ness, the anti-Muslim backlash. 2 days later, Mike reported that Muslim New Yorkers are still bracing themselves for hate crimes after Tuesday's terrorist attack. But there's a new victim of Islamic terrorist attacks. Unsatisfied with intimidating peaceful Muslims, the anti-Muslim backlash has set its sinister gaze on a defenseless expression, Allahu Akbar. Thankfully, the New York Times rushed to the defense of poor, helpless, unarmed Allahu Akbar with multiple articles such as, "I want Allahu Akbar back," and "Allahu Akbar," an everyday phrase tarnished by attacks. The Huffington Post laments that this phrase is being hijacked by extremists who ignore its purely spiritual significance. Allahu Akbar is an Arabic phrase that translates to "God is greater." In the wake of a deadly attack in New York on Tuesday, this inherently spiritual phrase is being used in a different context, to signify a link to political terrorism. In an article titled "What Allahu Akbar Really Means," CNN reminds us that the phrase is a celebration of life. And, not surprisingly, before the bodies of the New York City victims had even gone cold, America's princess of Sharia compliance, Linda Sarsour herself, tweeted, "Every believing Muslim says Allahu Akbar every day during prayers. We cannot criminalize. God is great. Prosecute the criminal, not a faith." Can you believe the nerve of all the anti-Muslim bigots forming a negative opinion of an expression that's shouted whenever jihadis are killing their friends and families? And can you believe that the senseless fear of Allahu Akbar goes all the way back to the time of Muhammad? After the Muslim community moved from Mecca to Medina, Muhammad wanted an official call to prayer, but he couldn't figure out how to do it. He thought about using a trumpet like the Jews did, but he liked the Jews less and less as they continued rejecting him as a prophet, so he decided to use a kind of gong, translated as clapper in the English translation of Ibn Ishaq. Muhammad ordered the craftsmen to build the clapper nearly 14 centuries before Robert Clapper invented the modern clapper. Yet another scientific miracle for the Einstein of illiteracy, Muhammad. But then one of his followers, a man named Abdullah, received a revelation from Allah. We read about his revelation in Ibn Ishaq, page 236. Abdullah said to Muhammad, "A phantom visited me in the night. There passed by me a man wearing 2 green garments, carrying a clapper in his hand, and I asked him to sell it to me. When he asked me what I wanted it for, I told him that it was to summon people to prayer, whereupon he offered to show me a better way. It was to say thrice, Allah Akbar. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. I bear witness that Muhammad is the apostle of God. Come to prayer, come to prayer. Come to divine service. Come to divine service. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. There is no God but Allah." When the apostle was told of this, he said that it was a true vision, if God so willed it, and that he should go with Bilal and communicate it to him so that he might call to prayer thus, for he had a more penetrating voice. Notice, Abdullah received a new revelation about Orthodox Islamic practice after Muhammad became a prophet. And Abdullah is the one who tells Muhammad what the correct practice is, when Muhammad couldn't figure it out. So when Muslims have their daily calls to prayer, they're obeying a revelation given to someone who came after Muhammad. So much for Muhammad being Allah's final prophet. I love my work. So reporters are correct to point out that Allahu Akbar is used to call Muslims to prayer. Why on earth would we be at all concerned about this expression? Why would it bother anyone? Why would people be frightened when they hear it? Well, there's a reason. The reason Allahu Akbar is frightening is that Muhammad himself made it frightening. Apparently, he forgot to read what the Huffington Post and CNN and the New York Times said about his favorite catchphrase. Same book, page 511. One whom I do not suspect told me from Anas bin Malik, when the apostle raided a people, he waited until the morning. If he heard a call to prayer, he held back. If he did not hear it, he attacked. We came to Akbar by night, and the apostle passed the night there. And when morning came, he did not hear the call to prayer. So he rode, and we rode with him, and I rode behind Abu Talha with my foot touching the apostle's foot. We met the workers of Akbar coming out in the morning with their spades and baskets. When they saw the apostle and the army, they cried, "Muhammad with his force," and turned tail and fled. The apostle said, "Allah Akbar, Akbar is destroyed. When we arrive in a people's square, it is a bad morning for those who have been warned." So when Muhammad and his army showed up to a town, they would wait until morning and listen for the call to prayer. If they heard Allahu Akbar, the call to prayer that Allah revealed to his final prophet, Abdullah, they would know that there were Muslims in the town, so they would hold back. But if they didn't hear Allahu Akbar, they would attack. Akbar was a Jewish settlement, and in the passage we just read, Jewish workers were heading to the fields when they saw Muhammad and ran. Were these Jewish men and women soldiers marching out to battle? No, they were ordinary civilians going about their daily lives, just like the people targeted in the recent Halloween massacre in New York City. Muhammad shouted Allahu Akbar and attacked. Muhammad and his followers killed anyone who resisted them, took the women as sex slaves, and forced those who remained to pay half of their annual produce as jizya. When Muhammad found out that a Jewish man named Kanana knew where some money was hidden, he ordered his followers to torture him. So they lit a fire on Kanana's chest. Once Kanana told them where the money was, they chopped off his head. Kanana had a beautiful wife named Safiya. If you're a Muslim and you're thinking, that's a coincidence, Muhammad had a wife named Safiya too, it's not a coincidence, it's the same woman. Muhammad had a man tortured and murdered and then took the man's wife back to his tent. Now think about this. Allahu Akbar was used for the Islamic call to prayer, and it was what determined whether Muhammad and his followers would attack a city. And it was what Muhammad yelled when his army attacked. So if you're going about your daily business and you hear someone yell, Allahu Akbar, are you being irrational for being afraid? Well, according to NBC and Mike and CNN and the New York Times and the Huffington Post and Linda Sarsour, we're all supposed to ignore 14 centuries of this expression being used as a war cry during jihad against non-Muslims. So if you're at all concerned when you hear someone yelling Allahu Akbar, you must be a bigot and an Islamophobe, because Allahu Akbar, remember, is just a celebration of life and something Muslims say during their prayers, as long as we ignore its use as a war cry. But now we see the connection between Allahu Akbar during prayer and Allahu Akbar during a terrorist attack. As Sharia proponent Linda Sarsour notes, every believing Muslim says Allahu Akbar every day during prayers. Muslims say Allahu Akbar. So by hearing or not hearing Allahu Akbar, you can distinguish between Muslims and non-Muslims. And as we've seen, this is exactly what Muhammad used to distinguish between Muslims and people who were to be raped, tortured, and killed. What a beautiful celebration of life, if by celebration of life you mean celebration of the violent subjugation of all non-Muslims. If you want to see more about reporters defending an ideology that calls for their violent subjugation, be sure to watch these videos. And since I have no intention of stopping, don't leave without clicking the subscribe button so that you won't miss future installments. I think it goes without saying that wherever you see politicians and reporters discussing the expression Allahu Akbar, give them a quick education by posting this video.